High above California's central coast, where the Santa Lucia Mountains drop straight into the Pacific, a palace rises out of the wilderness. From the highway below, it looks impossible. White towers floating above the fog, marble terraces hanging off a cliff, and sunlight flashing against distant domes. The locals call it Hearst Castle. It isn't a castle in the medieval sense. It's a monument, built by a man who decided that if he couldn't rule a kingdom, he'd buy one instead. The scale is staggering. Pools tiled in gold leaf, dining halls the length of train cars, guest houses more ornate than royal palaces. At a glance, it feels European, a misplaced fragment of Spain or Florence, set down in the scrub and sagebrush of California. But this place wasn't born from old-world nobility. It was built by William Randolph Hearst, the son of a prospector who struck it rich in the American West and raised a boy who would grow up to control how millions of people saw the world. Today, Hearst Castle is one of the most famous homes in America, and one of the few that no one can ever buy. It sits in a strange limbo between public treasure and private memory, owned by the state, preserved as a museum, and protected by laws so tight that even billionaires couldn't touch it. It's a mansion caught in amber, frozen by legacy, debt, and law. At first glance, it looks like a story about wealth and ego, a rich man's fantasy written in marble and gold. But underneath the extravagance lies something deeper, a reflection of the American myth itself, the idea that money can build permanence, that fame can substitute for legacy, that power can outlive the man who wields it. Hearst tried to build a home that would last forever. He succeeded, just not in the way he imagined. To understand why this hilltop palace became untouchable, you have to understand the man behind it, the empire he built, the chaos it caused, and the moment it all began to collapse under its own weight. The story doesn't start with marble or architecture. It starts with a child born into a fortune he didn't earn, and a hunger he would spend a lifetime trying to feed. William Randolph Hearst was born in 1863, the only child of George and Phoebe Hearst. His father was a frontier prospector who turned pickaxes into millions, mining gold, silver, and copper from the mountains of Nevada and California. His mother was a cultured woman who believed money should buy refinement, not just land. Between them, they gave their son a strange inheritance, endless wealth, and something far more dangerous, the conviction that he was meant to do something extraordinary. George Hearst bought land the way other men bought cattle. He owned whole valleys, whole hillsides. One of them lay near the Pacific Ocean, a ranch at San Simeon, vast and wild, where the mountains met the sea. When William was a boy, the family would ride up to camp there. He remembered the fog rolling in over the cliffs, the wind off the water, the sound of surf below the ridgeline. To him, the ranch wasn't just property. It was a kingdom waiting for a crown. Even as a child, Hearst was restless. Tutors complained that he was brilliant but undisciplined, curious but impossible to manage. He collected things: seashells, stones, trinkets, then art and books, anything that gave him a sense of ownership over beauty. At Harvard, he was remembered as charming, arrogant, and perpetually in trouble. He spent money recklessly, edited the student humor magazine, and was eventually expelled after using it to mock his professors. But he left with something more valuable than a degree: the understanding that stories could shape reputations faster than truth ever could. That realization became the seed of his empire. Hearst didn't want to discover gold like his father. He wanted to mine attention, and he understood early that attention, once controlled, could move nations. The boy who stared at the Pacific now looked out over a different kind of ocean. Millions of readers waiting to be told what to think, what to fear, what to desire. It was only a matter of time before he found his way to the press. And when he did, he would change the way America consumed information and build the fortune that would one day rise, stone by stone, into the impossible palace on the hill. William Randolph Hearst didn't inherit an empire. He built one out of ink. In 1887, at 24, he took control of his father's struggling newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner. George Hearst had bought the paper as a political favor. William saw something different, a machine for influence. He attacked the problem like an engineer designing a weapon. He upgraded the presses, hired the best illustrators, and filled the newsroom with young writers who could make facts feel electric. The Examiner became louder, faster, and more emotional than anything else on the West Coast. Crime, corruption, scandal, all were written as theater. Headlines screamed, stories provoked. Hearst believed information meant nothing unless it moved people, and he was right. Within 2 years, circulation tripled. The paper's investigations humiliated city officials, toppled police chiefs, and made enemies in every direction. But that was exactly what Hearst wanted. He wasn't chasing respectability, he was chasing control. Every scandal, every outrage, pulled more readers into his orbit. News was no longer about events. It was about emotion, and he was learning how to weaponize it. By the mid-1890s, San Francisco was too small for him. The real prize was New York, the beating heart of American media. So in 1895, Hearst bought the New York Journal and declared war on Joseph Pulitzer's world. What followed became the most vicious circulation battle in newspaper history. Each morning, the city woke to new front pages that screamed of murder, corruption, and foreign threats. Facts blurred with fiction, and spectacle replaced restraint. The duel between Hearst and Pulitzer gave birth to the term yellow journalism, sensationalism weaponized for mass appeal. But it worked. Hearst's readership exploded. His reporters staged rescues, bribed officials, and infiltrated jails. He used the paper to push for war with Spain, knowing outrage sold better than nuance. Whether or not he truly said, "You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war," hardly mattered. Everyone believed he could, and that belief made him one of the most powerful private citizens in America. Hearst didn't stop with newspapers. He bought magazines, Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, Harper's Bazaar, and used them to shape American taste. He financed films, owned radio stations, and turned his empire into a network that reached nearly every household in the country. His reach was so vast that presidents feared his disapproval, and Hollywood courted his praise. He'd built an invisible kingdom, not of land, but of attention. Yet even power, that vast, wasn't enough. Hearst wanted the physical world to reflect the scale of his influence. The hill at San Simeon, where he'd camped as a boy, still waited. Silent, untouched, and massive. In 1919, after his mother's death, the property finally became his. Standing on that ridge again, he could see the same horizon he'd stared at as a child. Now he had the money, the vision, and the ego to fill it. He didn't want a house. He wanted a monument, something that would outlast politics, newspapers, even his own name. To build it, he chose an architect unlike anyone else in America, Julia Morgan. Morgan was the first licensed female architect in California, precise, methodical, and quietly brilliant. She'd studied in Paris, mastered structural engineering, and earned a reputation for balancing strength with grace. Hearst saw in her a rare combination of discipline and imagination. He hired her to design what he modestly called a little something on the hill. When Morgan arrived at San Simeon, she found nothing but a wooden platform where the Hearst family used to camp. From that empty ground, she began to sketch what would become the most ambitious private construction project in the United States. Hearst wanted the grandeur of Europe transplanted into California. Part Spanish cathedral, part Renaissance villa, part fever dream. He demanded towers, terraces, courtyards, fountains. Morgan translated his visions into precise blueprints, calculating every angle, every weight, every material that could survive the mountain winds. Construction crews blasted through stone, hauled marble up steep grades, and installed elaborate water systems to feed the pools and gardens. Each change sparked another idea from Hearst. who redrew reality faster than the workers could lay brick. The project grew into a living organism, constantly changing, never finished. And with each new wing, Hearst's obsession deepened. The boy who once collected seashells now collected civilizations, and his castle on the hill was becoming the ultimate expression of both his power and his unraveling. By the 1920s, San Simeon had become more than construction. It was performance. Guests would arrive by train, winding up the mountain roads to a world that looked stolen from Europe and dropped into the California wilderness. The estate had its own zoo, its own movie theater, its own private airstrip. At night, the towers glowed gold against the dark ocean, and laughter echoed off marble halls built to outlast centuries. Hearst filled those rooms with power. Politicians, film stars, athletes, and royalty all gathered under ceilings older than the United States itself. Winston Churchill, Charlie Chaplin, Greta Garbo, Cary Grant, each made the pilgrimage. Marion Davies, Hearst's mistress and one of Hollywood's brightest stars, presided over the dinners like a hostess empress. The castle became a stage for America's elite, where gossip mixed with policy, and indulgence passed for diplomacy. But beneath the luxury, the cracks were already forming. The media empire that funded Hearst's dream was buckling under its own weight. He was expanding into films, real estate, and politics, all while his newspapers hemorrhaged money. His appetite for building had no ceiling. Every new idea added another wing, another tower, another imported sculpture. Hearst's warehouses overflowed with European art, so much that he sometimes forgot what he owned. Even his accountants couldn't keep track. By the early 1930s, the Great Depression hit, and the empire that once dictated public opinion began to drown in debt. Advertising collapsed. Banks called in loans. Hearst scrambled to liquidate assets, selling off priceless art to keep his companies alive. Construction at San Simeon slowed to a crawl. Unfinished wings stood silent. Some rooms remained bare, waiting for the fortune that would never come. The castle, once a symbol of limitless ambition, became a monument to excess. Even as his wealth evaporated, Hearst refused to leave. He stayed in the house he'd built as a monument to himself, surrounded by beauty he could no longer afford. His art collection, once his greatest achievement, turned into a reminder of his decline. In 1941, Citizen Kane hit theaters. Orson Welles' portrayal of Charles Foster Kane was unmistakably modeled after Hearst, a media giant who built a palace to fill the emptiness inside. Hearst's papers tried to bury the film, banning its mention entirely, but it was too late. The world saw through the fiction. Kane immortalized Hearst's rise and collapse long before his death. When Hearst finally died in 1951, San Simeon stood unfinished, half dream, half ruin. His businesses survived only through corporate restructuring. His heirs inherited a legacy tangled in lawsuits, loans, and logistics. The castle was too large to maintain, too valuable to sell, and too symbolic to destroy. So the family struck a deal. In 1957, they handed the estate to the state of California in exchange for tax relief and protection of the surrounding ranch lands. From that moment, Hearst Castle stopped being a private fantasy. It became public property, an American Versailles preserved not for its owner, but for history itself. Today, the castle stands frozen in that contradiction, part museum, part mausoleum. Every chandelier, every imported column, every fresco from Italy now belongs to the state. No one can buy it. No one can live there. It's a house that outlived the man who built it, a monument to the most dangerous illusion wealth ever sold, the idea that you can purchase immortality. After the transfer to the state, Hearst Castle entered a new kind of afterlife. What had once been a private fantasy became a managed relic. The state of California took possession not to inhabit it, but to preserve it, like a fossil of ambition. Teams of historians, conservators, and lawyers began the slow process of cataloging every square inch. They found imported tiles from Spain, marble from Italy, ceilings ripped from European monasteries, and furniture that spanned half a millennium of history. Everything had to be documented, stabilized, and protected. The castle's new reality was paradoxical. It was still magnificent, but it no longer belonged to anyone. The Hearst family retained ownership of the surrounding ranch lands, but the hilltop, the jewel itself, became public. Its rooms turned into exhibits. Its silence turned into tours. The laughter of guests gave way to the low murmur of docents and the clicks of cameras. The house built to impress the powerful now existed to entertain tourists. The laws that protect it are airtight. The estate cannot be sold, subdivided, or returned to private ownership. Its art collection is inalienable, bound to the site by legal design. Not even the Hearst Corporation can reclaim it. Every decision about restoration or display must pass through state committees. Even temperature control and lighting are regulated. The estate that once symbolized limitless freedom became an institution of limits, preserved against time and greed alike. And yet, that permanence is exactly what Hearst wanted. He couldn't keep his fortune, his power, or his newspapers forever. But this he ensured would never die. His name lives on in granite, iron, and glass, not through ownership, but through surrender. The castle's survival required its release. Today, standing on the terraces at sunset, the Pacific spreads out like molten silver below. The towers still catch the last light, and the air still carries the sound of wind from the sea. Nothing about it feels modern, and yet it remains unmistakably American, a monument to the kind of ambition that built the country and nearly destroyed the man who embodied it. Hearst Castle endures as both triumph and warning, proof that wealth can buy almost anything except peace, and that in the end, even the richest man in the world can only rent his legacy from time. Decades after its transfer, Hearst Castle still stands untouched, unchanged, but not unalive. Every year, thousands make the climb up the winding hill, not to see a home, but a fossil of ambition polished into legend. Docents speak in measured tones, explaining architectural details and imported ceilings. But what lingers isn't the craftsmanship, it's the weight of what it represents. The castle was never finished, and that's the secret to its immortality. It feels suspended mid-gesture, like its creator might return any moment to give one last order. Time hasn't erased his fingerprints, it's only frozen them. The dining hall still waits for guests who will never arrive. The Neptune pool still glitters under the California sun, drained and refilled, like a monument performing eternity. Every law that protects it, the preservation orders, the legal covenants, the public trust agreements, locks the castle tighter into myth. The state keeps it open to the world, but no one truly enters it. Every velvet rope and pane of glass reminds visitors that this was once private excess, now repurposed into national heritage. The House of Power became a museum of restraint, and that's where its meaning finally lands. Hearst Castle is not a celebration of wealth, it's an autopsy of it, a reminder that the greatest fortunes always turn into history exhibits, and that even the grandest vision of control ends up fenced off, guided, and narrated by strangers. From the Pacific Highway, the towers still gleam in the distance, white, distant, unreachable. The same view Hearst stared at as a boy, dreaming of ownership. The same view he bought, built, and ultimately lost. The mansion on the hill endures not because of what it cost to build, but because of what it cost to keep. It outlived its owner, outlived its empire, and became something rarer than all the art within it, a monument to the limits of power. When the crowds thin and the last tour bus disappears down the mountain road, Hearst Castle changes. The lights dim, the fountains fall silent, and the building exhales. Without the chatter of visitors, it feels like what it truly is. Not a house, but a mausoleum for a dream that outgrew its owner. The marble floors still gleam, but the warmth is gone. The air smells faintly of dust and salt from the sea below. Every room is perfectly preserved, yet no longer lived in. The chairs are arranged for guests who will never sit. The pool ripples for swimmers who will never return. It's not preservation, it's containment. The house must exist exactly as it was at the moment its story ended, because to change it would be to kill it. At night, from the coast highway, the estate is just a scatter of golden windows in the distance, hovering above the black ocean. It looks eternal, and in a way, it is. But eternity isn't the same as life. The same ambition that once filled those rooms has been turned to dust, repackaged into a lesson about the cost of grandeur. Every year, the state invests millions to keep it that way, to stop time from finishing what debt, scandal, and death started. And maybe that's the most fitting end for Hearst's vision, a fortress of permanence that survives only because it's no longer allowed to change. Hearst Castle remains untouchable, not because of its wealth or beauty, but because it represents something Americans still worship and fear in equal measure. The idea that power can last forever if you build it high enough. Yet every empire falls, every monument becomes a museum, and every story of wealth eventually turns into a story of loss. That's what lingers on the hill above the Pacific. The silence after ambition. The moment when ownership ends, but the structure remains, watching over the coastline like a ghost that refuses to fade.